You're live to Business Incorporated this Thursday, the 10th of October. I am Bosin Omofayo. We welcome our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. Coming up on the show this day, Egypt's annual urban inflation falls surprisingly to 4.8% in September from 7.5% in the previous month. And Afrexim Bank is planning an IPO of global depository receipts for the London Stock Exchange. And the UK's economy shrank 0.1% in August as Brexit fears continue to mount. Let's get the show started, everyone. Investor sentiment here in Africa were mostly positive. Intraday Thursday, the EGX 30 in the Egyptian market gained the most, a little over 1%, while the Kenyan market closed Wednesday on the positive side, 0.2%. Today in South Africa, the GSC Broad Index gained about 0.5%, and you can see the Nigerian stock market a little bit negative intraday. Meantime, in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia was the only negative index over the Tadawul intraday Thursday, down about 0.5%, while the Qatari index added 0.29%. In the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi's stock index was up about 0.4%, and Dubai financial markets just a little into 0.02%. Let's check in with the European markets trading lower Thursday morning with high-level trade talks between the U.S. and China set to commence against the backdrop of geopolitical tensions in Turkey. My colleague Annette Wishbeck is waiting to tell us more from the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Is there on behalf of DWTV for Channels Television. Let's cross over to Frankfurt and get a bit more into these stories, how the markets in Europe. Good afternoon, Annette. How much impact is the latest military incursion of Turkish forces into Syria having on the European markets, just as everyone's trying to wrap our heads around the resumed talk between U.S. and China on the trade side?
Well, actually, the markets are more focusing on the trade issue. Of course, the escalation on the border to Syria is not great, especially if you look at the geopolitical dimension it potentially has. But currently, investors are holding their breath looking at what happens to the trade negotiations, because clearly, as one influential investor was putting it, the outcome of those trade negotiations could be the soundtrack of the remainder of the year and perhaps also the one for 2020. In other words, if they fail, it could be a game changer for the market.
Serious questions that they will need to answer.
Exactly. So finally, let's check in with the markets. Can you check in the pound sterling and the state of the UK stocks for us today, just to wrap things up on this side?
Yeah, it's been a mixed morning and going into intraday in the equities and currencies market, because again, you know, you read out all those poor statistics that we've been getting, but the headlines here in the UK are that it seems as if we may not be heading into recession. But let's have a look at those numbers specifically. The FTSE All Share is down 0.10%, the FTSE 100 is down 0.06%, and the FTSE 250 is down 0.29%. In currencies, the British pound is slightly up on the US dollar by 0.32%, down on the euro by 0.15%, and up on the Japanese yen by 0.30%.
Very interesting one. Thank you so much, Juliana. That's how we wrap up Thursday with you in London, at least on the business side here. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time here on the show. Thank you so much. Oh, let's give you a quick review of today's trading day across the major Asian markets. Some of the bourses recovered from earlier lows to trade higher this Thursday as investors watched for development on the U.S.-China trade front ahead of high-level negotiations between the two economic powerhouses. Mainland Chinese stocks were up in the afternoon, with the Shanghai Composite about 0.2%, and the Shenzhen Composite also advanced 0.5%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index was about 0.19%, while the Japanese Nikkei 225 0.21%, and the Topix traded at 0.29%. In South Korea, the Kospi shed 0.97%, one of the highest within the region, and Australia's ASX 200 slipped 0.22%. Stock futures in the U.S. were looking slightly lower this morning, but that's turning slightly green just before we came here on air. We'll talk about the Unilever, talking about biodegradable plastics and what have you moving forward. What does this have to do with the environment? How does it concern us here in Nigeria? That's coming to you after the break.